Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching NewsMaker Live on DBS Television with me, Timothy Polio. Stand by in just a moment. We'll be taking your calls. My guest is the political leader of the Lucian People's Movement, Mr. Thurl Prudent. Lessons from the just concluded general election. Any for you?
A lot of lessons. That when you're in the game of politics, and you're preparing to run an election, it's always good to plan way ahead, and that one shouldn't always try to wait, say for example, in the final year to get everything that you need together. In my case, I wouldn't say I did that, because I was very vocal in the last 4.5 years, LPM and on your show, on Radio Caribbean, also on all of the other media houses. We have been out there, even at a time when the United Workers' Party was having all their wranglings and quarrels. The LPM remained a voice for the people, and you do need that third voice. You do need that voice that can stand up away from the two major parties and show a difference. And I think we learned that. But however, going back to the lessons, I think that there were lessons there. However, you just have to understand it, or change what you think you did wrong, and go back again and fight. And I'm a fighter. I've fought elections all my life, you understand. In 1982, I was Peter Phillips' campaign manager. I was only 17 years old. I couldn't vote for him, but I served as his campaign manager. So I've seen battles. I've seen fights. I've had defeats. We've had victories. And this one is no different. And for me, this is where my courage comes, and from my God, and my mom, who is really someone who gives a lot of support, but most of all, my wife, Sharon, and my children, Nashoto and Kate.
What are some of the issues you think, pressing issues, that you'd want the current MP to address in the constituency?
Unemployment. Unemployment is huge in Grosley and in the rest of the country, but specifically, as you asked me, for Grosley, this needs to be addressed. We also have a situation of the Friday nights that is happening, and all the parties, the street parties. We need to be able to regulate those a little bit. There are actual sick persons in those communities. There are children that needs to do their homework and study. As much as we are happy that Grosley has it's the entertainment capital of the world, we also have to respect the fact that it's still a community where you have families being raised, you know. So there must be a balance between the noise level and including the people who can live normal lives there in the community. We also other issues that have to be raised, that have to be addressed, is like the polyclinic, in Grosley. The wait time is just too long. Sometimes you do not have the people to dispense medicines, you understand, at the clinic, and I'm saying it's not good enough. There is also the issue of agriculture. We need to be able, in rural parts of Grosley, to be able to enable farmers to be able to go back to the land, go back to farming, and for young people, get them involved in agribusiness, meaning that they can own their own business through the agri-businesses of taking, for example, mangoes, mango juice, allowing them to be able to, put them into cans, packaged properly, owning their own business, or getting products out of the raw materials or things that we grow here in this country. There's a lot to be done in Grosley, and I've always said, people, the citizens or voters in the country should never thank any politician that provide roads and things like electricity, water. These are basic things that any representative should do, and so I'm opposed to anybody thanking them. What you should be thanking them for is creating an enabling environment for economic activity to happen, and for also being able to provide the opportunities for your children to be able to go out there, study, and become better, come back home and become better citizens out here in this country and contribute to our community.
Concerns have been expressed about the disproportionate size of Grosley compared to other constituencies. Take, for example, like Dennery South and so on, where you have, I think, a little over 4,000 voters.
Yes.
Do you believe that in time for the next general election, efforts that were undertaken previously, last couple of years, to at least reducing the size, to look at the boundaries and so on, those efforts should be undertaken?
It should be undertaken. No one will, Emma can't deny it, Spider can't deny it, I can't deny it, that Grosley is a very huge constituency. Just the campaigning throughout the constituency of Grosley, it takes a lot. And so you're practically exhausted every day, you know, when you're through touring and going through different parts of the constituency. I don't believe that one person is adequate enough to be able to represent the entire needs of the people of that constituency. And so I see no reason why it will not be undertaken, and constitutionally it should have been done a long time ago. And so I expect them to whenever the courts rule, to be able to go with what the courts are saying. I suspect there may be a little bit of adjustment in terms of Guy Joseph's constituency, which is Castries South East. And Guy's objection, as a matter of fact, was never against constitutional, reconfiguration of the entire, areas that were reconfigured. I think his thing was more about political gerrymandering, probably, which I guess he allegedly said that the Labour Party was doing. And other than that, I see no reason why this shouldn't happen.
Yeah, just come up with some specific figures. In the case of Dennery South, in the 2011 general election, the number of electors, 4,563.
Yes.
And in the case of Grosley, you have 18,220. I think this time around you had over 20,000.
Yes, that's right.
So therefore, if you have some adjustment being done to the boundaries of Grosley, okay, so that you could have more MPs, more individuals contesting to provide better quality representation to that area. What about, let's say, the other constituencies that are much smaller, where you do not realize there's significant adjustments in the quality of life of people and so on, that would be as a result of proper representation? How do you, therefore, justify having reducing the size of that constituency when, for example, in the smaller constituencies it does not reflect that because of the small nature of the constituencies that they're getting proper representation?
Well, you know, I agree with what you just said. However, I was one of those who was opposed to it in the beginning, because I felt, but I was opposed to it because I felt there was not enough consultations with the people. And you don't just do your gerrymandering or reconfiguration without even the input of the people of the communities. Basically, they presented something, it was already cut dry, and in their minds, this is how the last administration was going to do it, and everybody had to accept it this way. This was my objection. My second objection was the fact that if you're creating 3 additional seats, for example, in Grosley, you create pressure on the public purse, and I thought so. But I would have gone with probably two constituencies within Grosley, as opposed to 3, that as was proposed by the St. Lucia Labour Party. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it's just very large, and I don't blame I can't to say that, because in smaller constituencies, because people are not always adequately represented, that it would happen in Grosley. It's not always the case. Maybe it's just about personality. The people we elect to office, I've always said, if you don't like politics, you should not get involved. If you don't like people, don't get involved, because this means that you have to give your time and attention to the people of your community. And this is where inadequate representation comes from. So maybe we need to do a little bit more screening as political organizations in terms of who we choose to represent our parties, because those persons may well end up becoming part of government or part of the House of Assembly. And if we send lazy people to the House, if we send persons who care more about being paid than representing people in the House, then you will automatically have very poor representation of the people here.
This gives me the opportunity to focus on constitutional reform.
Yes.
Therefore, are you in support of recalling parliamentarians?
We've always said that LPM believes in those things. We fought for the fact that no sitting prime minister should serve more than 2 terms. I praise the work of the late Susie Dovey and her team, because I know they worked very hard at it. And even going to the diaspora to get at, the take of St. Lucians in the diaspora, and even in St. Lucia, in our homeland here of St. Lucia. But what was so sad about it was when they finally, the government, Dr. Anthony's government, finally brought this to be debated in the House. It was almost as if they trashed every component that would have brought about the kind of real changes that was needed here in our constitution and in our government and in our country, because you plucked out all the good things, like the right to recall, the 2 terms, you understand, for sitting prime minister, and all the goodies that would hold the government accountable, that would ensure that a government or people or persons do not believe that they can become career politicians in this country. It was kicked out, tossed out, and I'm hoping that there can be another debate where those same things that Susie Dovey and her team propose, a lot of it can be implemented, because our country needs that team. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what party you support. You must be St. Lucian first before you support your party. But it's quite the opposite. As a matter of fact, I find St. Lucians to be more patriotic to the political party than they are for independence. I don't see the level of patriotism that or happiness or reveling that happens around independence, like I see during election time. Maybe we need to place more emphasis on our country, and then if we're able to do that, then we can then take care of party and understand very well our country supersedes our political allegiances.
With regard to reforming our constitution, yes, don't you think that if recommendations like the right to recall and fixed dates and so on,
yes,
were to be implemented,
yes,
and that would be spearheaded by the politicians in the first place, ruling, yes, politicians.
Yes.
This would be tantamount to them shooting themselves in the foot.
Well, sometimes democracy, some falls. Some will not love or may become victims to democracy itself.
But it will take a lot of courage,
yes,
on the part of ruling parliamentarians,
yes,
on the part of a prime minister to say, I'm subjecting myself to this recommendation.
Well,
fixed dates,
if they love,
for example, fixed dates for elections,
yes,
and the power of recall,
yes,
and also term limits.
Tim, if you love your country, we need to take a pause. We need to be able to say, we need to create a fixed date, because it creates an undue advantage for the incumbent government. And you have to think of yourself, even if you're in power today, one day you will be in opposition. And you'd love to be able to have that even playing ground, where you know that there's a fixed date, and we won't have like a snap election like what Dr. Anthony just did, or we won't have the kinds of, for example, campaign finance laws. We need that. We need to be able to know where political parties get their monies from, and who are the persons who are contributing to those political organizations. We have no idea who those persons are. But when governments come to power, we have no idea who is lingering in the shadows of that government, being able to direct that government to do whatever they want to do because they had the money and help that party come to power. We need to be able to clean up our act here in St. Lucia. And yes, it's true that you might be shooting yourself in the foot if you decide to do that, especially if you're serving parliamentarian. You don't want the thing about this, fixed date. You don't want recall and all of this kinds of stuff. But you have to think what's best for our country. And what's best for our country is those reforms that are good. And you don't want us to continue like most African nations, where you have leaders perpetually You understand? That's why Africa is not moving forward. Some parts of Africa, I would say, isn't moving forward. And you always have issues and civil war in those countries because leaders stay for too long. We've not gotten to that point of civil war, but I'm saying if we're not careful in this country and the frustration continues and the musical chairs continue, we may well not have peaceful elections in this country at some point.
What kind of foreign policy changes would you like to see?
I would love to see St. Lucia actually take a time to speak to all the Caribbean islands and to be able to, especially the OECS, we're already talking about OECS unity. We can have one single embassy representing St. Lucia, for example, at the representing the OECS at the United Nations. It would mean that we would be saving monies, not only of St. Lucia, but also St. Vincent, Dominica, St. Kitts and so forth, Antigua, would be saving monies because it means that we have one shared area. So in that one area, St. Lucia would have its station or representation, Antigua and so forth, but we speak with one voice at the United Nations. I also would love to see where you have ambassadors who are appointed, who are forced every 6 months to come to Parliament and challenged by both government and opposition to give an account of their stewardship abroad. So to say to us, okay, in the last year, this is what I've been able to do for our country. I've been able to bring X amount of scholarships. I've been able to bring X amount of investment to our country. We can't be stuck in this old age of democracy where you become international legislators, at the United Nations. We need persons who are savvy, persons who have marketing skills to be able to market St. Lucia and bring back tangible returns to our country. In terms of foreign policy, I would love to see us move a little bit more into areas like the Middle East and areas where we don't have the traditional friends like America, Canada, and England will always remain. But we need to find other niche countries that we can move into, where we can establish diplomatic relationship and to be able to get the kind of returns we want from those relationships.
Would you keep Jafali as our representative at the IMO?
I would let Dr. Jafali go. And the reason why I would let Dr. Jafali go is because it has just brought too much controversy to St. Lucia and to our people. And not only that, too, he's hardly even attended, I think one meeting, he attended. And I believe that we have capable men and women here in this country who can represent St. Lucia at such a level. And for that, I say, let's get rid of him, honestly.
What about having foreign nationals represent us?
It is
in
okay.
Diplomatic positions.
I don't have a problem with that, but it must be transparent. Because, we as a nation, we do what you call, we elect ambassadors and foreign diplomats based on if they're supporting us. But our foreign corp should be made up of persons who are professionals, not necessarily petty hacks. Persons who, no matter if a government change, understands their role and understands they're working for the government. A typical example was Tom Chu. I think the Labour Party misunderstood or they never understood the fact that he was a professional. And no matter what government came into power in Taiwan, that he would still be a diplomat, you understand? And that he was not working necessarily for the DPP, which is back in office. The same party Kenny did not want is back in office in the pro-independence party is back in office in Taiwan. So at the end of the day, we need to have a system like that, where you do not continually have any party hack just being sent as an ambassador, but you have trained persons who understand international law, understands international relations, can relate to the rest of the world, and be able to bring back to St. Lucia the kind of tangible investments that are needed.
If you were Prime Minister of St. Lucia right now,
Yes.
in the place of Mr. Alan Chasney,
Yes.
what major foreign policy decision would you take?
I would ensure. It's a question I've never really thought of, because I talk in terms of general terms. I give some specifics in terms of what I would like to do. But in terms of our foreign policy, I would ensure that in areas like Africa, for example, South Africa, we would ensure that we establish the kind of relationship with South Africa where we can benefit. I've always said, for example, when it comes to education, South Africa is a leading country in terms of education. They have some of the oldest institutions in the world. You understand? Because don't forget, it was Anglo-Saxon persons, who went to South Africa to be able to build a nation out of South Africa. And I would say that by doing so, we can get education much cheaper in South Africa than we can get in the United States, and we can educate more people in South Africa for a little bit of money than what obtains in America and Canada and so forth. So my thrust would be within the African basin, African nations, and change the focus on just our traditional friends, but by moving into areas of Africa.
A political question before we go to a break. Are the prime ministers involving directly in our politics?
Yes.
Because just a few days before our general election in St. Lucia, the Prime Minister of Dominica was on a program on radio in St. Lucia.
Yes.
Literally campaigning and instructing St. Lucians to vote for the St. Lucia Labour Party, and vote particularly because of the stewardship and the qualities, leadership qualities of Dr. Kenny Anthony. What do you think about this?
I'm opposed to that. I've always been opposed to it. I remember when I was a member of the United Workers' Party, and we were close friends with, back then the UWP was close friends with the Jamaica Labour Party, with Edward Siaga. I never saw John Compton go over to Jamaica and ask Jamaicans to vote for Edward Siaga. I never saw Siaga come to St. Lucia and ask St. Lucians to vote for John Compton. What there was sharing of ideas, where United Workers' Party operatives would be trained by the Jamaicans, and I was among those persons who was trained by the Labour Party of Jamaica. You understand, in terms of political warfare, in terms of understanding how to manage a campaign and so forth. This I can accept, because you do have sister parties in parts of the Caribbean. But to overtly interfere in the political aspects of any nation by urging other nationals that are not your nationals to vote for a political party, I think it's wrong. Because it only creates animosity. It creates a kind of a division within the Caribbean that, now that Alan Chasney is in power, how does Roosevelt Skerritt, how does he relate to Alan Chasney? You understand, after asking St. Lucians to vote for Kenny Anthony. So I think it's something that we need to avoid, and I saw a lot of it began happening with the St. Lucia Labour Party when they brought, I think Tony Blair's first people had come to power, party had come to power. They brought in a few MPs from England to speak actually on their platform.
That would have been in 1997.
1997. We saw a lot of it happen in years afterwards, and the United Workers' Party seemed to have followed suit in doing the same. But when I was a member of the UWP, that was unheard of. You don't stick your finger into the politics of other nations. However, as sister parties, like I said, training and offering training, I don't see a problem with that.
You're watching NewsMaker Live on DBS Television with me, Timothy Poulion, and my guest, Mr. Thurl Prudent, the political leader of the LPM. When we return, your calls. Stay with us.